Welcome to an Executive Leadership Institute for a Stronger Nonprofit Sector. So my name is Robena Spangler, and I'm the Senior Director of Leadership Development and Organizational Excellence at Social Current. We're so happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're taking an opportunity to create a space for a conversation with alumni from our Executive Leadership Institute. Dr. Cha-Tanya Lankford, Greg Ryan, Kevin Walsh, those are our guest speakers today. And let's start the conversation with Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Welcome.
Hi, Robena. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Yeah, as my man has said, I'm currently retired. I've worked 43 years with nonprofit agencies in the state of New York, providing child welfare, mental health, and juvenile justice services. Uh, and since I graduated from Eli in 2011, and since then I've been on the advisory board, and I've also served as a mentor for the program for uh, new leaders who are currently working on their projects. Right before I went to Eli, I was working in an agency. I was relatively new to it. I was working in an agency that provided a broad range of levels of out of home care and community based services for youth who were placed through the family court and came to us either through the departments of social services or the juvenile justice programs. This agency was pretty enriched. I mean, we had an intensive treatment program, a regular RTC program, group homes, apartment living programs. We had foster care. We had our own mental health clinic, day treatment school, workforce development program, waiver programs, and prevention programs. A wide array of services that should easily meet the needs of the youth and families that we serve. Our issue at our organization, though, is despite having all these services available, we had an organizational structure and administrative framework that really didn't integrate and make the most effective use of all these programs. We were lined up around department structures, and so what it really seemed was that all these services were acting independently. We would have department meetings, and we'd have some coordinated activities between departments. But the reality of it was that each of these programs were operating in somewhat isolation in their own silo. So we weren't going to get the benefit of some integrated care. So when we were looking at this, we realized, we simply had to we had to do something different. We had to come up with a new structure that would help meet the needs of our children. So at that time, then I was talking to the CEO, who happened to be a friend of mine, and he made the recommendation of going to Eli. He thought, well, maybe if I went to this program, I would get some new ideas or some new information on how we could address that problem that I was just referring to. So with that, I enrolled in the program. And then immediately I began to think about what was the project I wanted to be working on while I was there that was going to help my agency. So as I said, we had youth that were placed through family court in our program. We also had some specialized clinical services. And one of our specialized programs was we worked with youth whose primary reason for placement was sexually aggressive behaviors. They had offended in the community and they were in need of some type of placement. So this was a specialized group. Well, in addition, this same population had permanency issues. They had minimal or if any family support in the communities. So this was a group of youth that were going to be transitioning through foster care and that were at extremely high risk of dropping out of the program and ultimately aging out of foster care and becoming homeless. So we wanted to figure out how we could come up with a continuum of care that could provide support throughout the length of time as these young people were transitioning to becoming self-directed. So that was our challenge, and that was my project. So with that, we signed up to Eli. I went out to the program, and I began to participate in the process. And I think, as you heard from Robena, there was a really enriched a curriculum of ideas and new initiatives that were involved, that were part of training and leadership. And it helped me come up with some new perspectives. And I really think there was a lot of that learning that happens in that didactic process of the reading assignment, the classroom instructions, the group discussions that happen, and then the site visits. And so I have to say that I almost expected that. I knew it was going to be good. What I didn't expect, and I thought was really enriching for Eli, was when you're participating in the program, the continuous knowledge sharing and informal networking that happens among the participants. We spent almost all our free time sharing ideas, talking about the challenges that we had in our own programs, and this was in the environment of the program. We even had organized dinners in the evening with topics that we continued to discuss and learn about. And it was this kind of learning process, in addition to the classroom, that I found incredibly invaluable. And what I liked about the program, that peer learning continued then toward the course of the year, and continued through the use of case reviews and meetings and discussions with cohorts we were assigned. So those are things I didn't anticipate and I truly valued. And the other part of the program, and I think it's a signature part of this, is that participants are assigned a mentor when they're working on their projects. And the mentor, what the mentor does, it will meet with the person through the course of the year, and it gives them some feedback and time to reflect on their projects, and not just their projects, also on any of the issues and challenges they might be meeting as they assume these new leadership roles. It gives it time to think about it and learn from it. To me, this was invaluable. This ongoing support, the course of a whole year, was really what helped me work on a project and really helped it come to good fruition. Let me see. So I'm losing my so when I did this, I went to the program, I got that experience, and then I started trying to think, what was it that made Eli so effective for me, and why I think the program is so good.
Yeah.
I realized that it's the philosophy, I don't know if it's the word is their philosophy or their underlying principles that guide the program, but it's the fact that in Eli, they take the approach that they don't train leaders. We develop leaders. And accumulating information is not the same as acquiring knowledge. To develop a leader and to accumulate and acquire knowledge is a process. It's a process. It's not an event. And this is what Eli does. It gives you that process of development. And that's something that I think is different from any of the other training programs that are available. I look back on and I think about it. It's clear why they're successful. We work on a project that is built on the principles of adult learning with feedback and reflection. Eli captures and uses the peer support and knowledge and the informal networking that we share from our colleagues. And then throughout the course of the year, they have this continuous level of support through the use of the mentor. The strategic use of mentoring and the mentoring with its reflection and feedback, I think, is really key for someone developing their skills in leadership. So I guess what I would really want to say is that if anybody and if this worked for me, who commits to and engages in the process at Eli is definitely going to come out with a different perspective and much more equipped to deal with the current environment that their agencies are working in. I mean, everybody today is faced with all sorts of organizational change and and uncertainty and everything. The experience of Eli gave me a perspective on certainly how to manage that thing better. So that essentially is what I valued about Eli and really what I got out of the program.
Thank you.
So with that, I will pass the mic to Greg.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. My name is Greg Ryan. I am the strategy officer at Heartland Family Service. We are a multi-service organization based in Omaha, Nebraska and Council Bluffs, Iowa, right on the Missouri River between the two states. And we serve, those communities and surrounding communities in that area. In terms of like why I chose to go to ELI, well, I was a graduate in 2013. So I was a 2013 grad, and our CEO was new to the organization. I think he started in 2009. And as he came into the organization and was getting familiar with us and the services that we offer and our stakeholders, he was connecting with Social Current and learned about this ELI opportunity. And so he went through it as a way to start to, well, really to kind of like broaden his knowledge of human services and the work across the country with, similar types of organizations. And it was really a powerful experience for him. And so when I moved into the strategy officer role, which was a newly created role, he suggested that this would be a really great opportunity, that ELI would be a great opportunity, again, kind of to broaden my my knowledge and expertise and understanding of the nonprofit sector. And when I went through ELI, I actually went through a colleague here at Heartland Family Services as well. So we went together through the program as a pair, which was really powerful in that, I had somebody on site that I could talk to about, challenges with my project or things that we were learning together. And it really was powerful in terms of going through with a colleague. And very similar to what Kevin said in terms of that mentorship, having someone to bounce ideas off of, to deepen the learning with, that can be a really powerful piece. So really my choice to go to ELI was a suggestion from my CEO who had gone through it, and just really thankful for that opportunity. So a big hallmark of the program is the capstone project. And at the time that I was going through ELI, I was really interested and focused on collective impact topic, how communities can come together, organizations and initiatives in a community can get aligned around a particular topic and really have an impact greater than any one of those organizations might have on their own. So my project was really about collective impact initiatives that were happening in our area and learning more about what was happening in our area around collective impact. As I left ELI, what I had learned through my project, I started to apply internal, kind of like a collective impact, maybe with like a little c. So as a multi-service organization, one of our strategic strengths are the variety of services that we provide. But it's important that we leverage that variety, that it's not just everyone kind of doing their own thing without a common purpose. And so, I took what I had learned and the thinking I had done around collective impact and looked at how do our individual programs all contribute to a common good for the community, a common impact for the community. And so I started just to work internally on that. And one of the concepts that we used to kind of galvanize us was about intended impact. So you have organizations have a mission statement. Oftentimes those are very broad. Ours is very broad. And sometimes what's missing is, how do we know if we're achieving our mission? How could we measure our success towards our mission? And the concept of intended impact really kind of filled that gap in terms of being more specific about what types of measured impact do we expect to have across all of our programs and services. And really what came out for us was safety, self-sufficiency, and well-being as those three key areas and areas that we could measure related to our programs contributing to our client and our community's safety, their self-sufficiency, and their well-being. So after we had kind of set that conceptual framework, we began some work. We partnered with an evaluator and started to collect data over a 2-year period to really kind of establish measures of these three areas of impact, and then see how our programs and services aligning with, contributing to those 3 areas of impact. That was really interesting and powerful for us. And it's something that has continued through to this day. Although we don't still have we had a pretty intensive 2-year study that was constructed and implemented. But from that, we've continued to measure those things in our programs over time. So, 2013 is when I graduated, and it's been 11 years now. And that project that I did at that time is still rippling and impacting the agency today. Very similar to our CEO, his project, John Janetta, he developed an internal professional development program in our organization. We call it Good Works Leadership Academy. Good Works is a tagline for our organization, so it ties in there. And again, that is something that is now in its, I think, 14th year of us doing Good Works Leadership Academy to develop internal leaders. Let's see, what else? Some of the things that were valuable to me from the program, Kevin already mentioned a number of them. I think one of the things that struck me was the variety of perspectives that are invited to present throughout the weeks of ELI. It was great to hear from lots of different experts and a lot of different perspectives. And it really kept every single day and every single session was fresh, because you're getting kind of a different perspective or take on things that impact the nonprofit human services sector. So that variety was really impactful, memorable, valuable to me. I think the other thing that's kind of unique maybe to ELI is the way that the cohorts are structured. So the ELI program is a 2-year program where you're going to go, I started, my first year was 2012, and then I graduated in 2013. And you get this, you really build these relationships with your cohort group that really stand the test of time. And, I was looking through some of the people that alumni that are joined today and seeing familiar names there. And it's amazing how that connection sticks by spending time with the group over a 2-year period. The other thing is that those cohorts, they overlap. So not only do you build these strong connections with your cohort that goes through the same 2 years that you do, but you also make these connections with cohorts that are overlap. So you've got second years, as a first year, second years that have been through it before, kind of know the ropes, have had some experience, and they can kind of help guide you along in terms of like ideas about your project and how to approach it. And then when you're a second year, you've got first years coming in, and you can kind of play that mentoring role type of role. And it's really interesting how that dynamic plays out. I think it's super powerful for the ELI program, how there's these overlapping cohorts. And it also just expands the networking that happens. So not only do you get to really know the people in your cohort, you get to know the previous cohort and the next cohort. So it really expands that networking. And then, if you go out further from that, you talk to one of the cohorts on either end of your group, and they have connections from, their overlapping cohorts. So it really is an interesting web of professional networking that ELI has really been a center of, particularly for me, and I've really just appreciated that. It's been extremely valuable. So just some of the things that have really impacted me in terms of the ELI program and how it's kind of shaped me as a professional in this organization and in the human services sector. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cha-Tanya.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Greg, for that. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Cha-Tanya Lankford, and I serve as the State Director of Foster Care Services for Pressley Ridge here in the great state of Delaware. Pressley Ridge is a multi-service line organization actually located in 7 states in the United States. I am actually a proud 2011 graduate of ELI. It was actually my CEO at the time, who I still give credit to this day, Scott Hasselman, who recommended me for the ELI program. He saw me as a new leader within the organization, saw my inquisitiveness, my desire to constantly grow. And so he recommended this program to me. He supported me in the program. And most importantly, he made space for me to attend ELI. It was the first time that someone at my mid-management position within my organization actually had the opportunity to attend. So I was humbled by that opportunity. So I must admit, I was totally intimidated by the program, especially after seeing prior cohorts. Greg mentioned you get to overlap and see your prior cohort present their capstone or final project before you in your first year. Their roles, their project titles, even speaking to executives who had completed the program, I was at all. And I was kind of intimidated and wondering, is this an experience that is a right fit for me? So knowing that I felt overwhelmed, I knew that it was a good space for me because it was an opportunity for me to expand and to stretch myself. And to this day, that has been invaluable. So my project focused on creating a multi-tier level of care service. So like I said, I was a new leader within my state in a brand new state that my organization moved into at the time, providing a very high level of care, of foster care services known at that time as individualized residential treatment. It was a great service, layered with a lot of supports, wraparound, intensive home, in-home services, professional services being provided in the home, in the community, in the youth. And while it was a great program, just coming new to the state of Delaware, I was like, I don't know if this is a service that can have sustainability. So at that time, one of the taglines of our organization was all children, always. So I wondered, if we have that tagline, why are we saying we will only take high acuity youth? If we have what is now an evidence-based pre-service curriculum for our families, why don't we afford that opportunity to any child needing an out-of-home experience? So my ELI project introduced the idea that if we are proving beneficial for one subset of youth and families, I think we can do that service for all. So we were able, and under my project, developed a 5-level of care system for kids in care. And because of that, we are in operation today. So I completed in 2011. By 2014, the state was ending that service. But because we had already begun that multi-tier licensure, our multi-tier levels of care, we were able to provide a service for any child in the state who needed an out-of-home placement. And our census rose, our program grew. We ended up putting an office in all of our counties that we serve here in the state. And we were able to truly live up to what we say we do, and that is all children, always. So it was a great experience just to go through that process. Greg and Kevin already spoke on the value that they've seen. I echo all those sentiments, but I'm also a firm believer that exposure precedes elevation. It was the ELI experience that did that for me. That exposure in child welfare is broad landscape, it's many nuances. It was all literally, and being the ability to sit in rooms literally with subject matter experts, many of whom to this day I still see as a part of my professional board of directors. I find that as an honor. I can reach out to them for consultation, insight, a perspective, and even just to flesh out some challenges that I am faced with. I can be vulnerable, transparent, and honest. And I do know that I am getting informed responses. I am receiving support. I actually see this in this program and the ongoing connections that I've made as my own very own self-care. The Executive Leadership Institute once had an annual conference called the Senior Leadership Conference, and that was literally placed in my line item budget each year. And I've seen it and still refer to it as my annual supervision. It was a time that I was able to disconnect from my day-to-day, very similar to ELI, and immerse myself in learning environments that required those deeper dives and that allowed me to expand my thought processing. So the networking, the ongoing collaboration by serving as co-chair of now the ELI Alumni Board and access to professional mentors have been crucial in my ongoing personal and professional development. This experience goes behind didactic learning, and it does provide that experiential learning opportunities and that cross-discipline expertise that is offered and provided throughout the country. So I don't know any other program that I've been involved in that is quite like ELI. So I thank ELI and I credit ELI every day for the professional that I continue to become. So thank you.
Thank you all for all your comments, your sharing, making sure that we, covered every piece of the program and what it meant to you. I truly appreciate that. So let me set the table here for some, ongoing discussions. What I was able to pull out of what you talked about was this ability to fuel knowledge, share it, be able to absolutely, in the words of Social Current, activate the true power across the network and organizations, and we're doing it on a national level. So I don't know if folks took notice that our guests today are from 3 different states. So what I see the value in that is creating a network that's national, having colleagues across the nation who are experiencing things, the same things, but might be experiencing them differently. And again, it rolls up into a learning opportunity for us. So I wanted to talk with you about some of the trends that leaders are actually embracing. Some of them are embracing them willingly. Some of them are embracing them in very challenging and difficult situations here in 2024. And part of the discussion is, I don't want to just spend the time because no one's really, people are interested in what I have to say, but they're not that interested. And especially when I started out the show muted. So I want to make sure that I give the opportunity to you all who are in the field doing the work. And Kevin, even though you're retired, you have a rich amount of information to offer us. So let's get started. So some of the trends that leaders are faced with. One is their staff and workplace well-being. We know that the folks that we work with come to us with their own lived experiences and circumstances. And then layered on top of that are the responsibilities of being able to carry out their roles at the job, multi-layered responsibilities. And then they're delivering, in most cases, services to individuals who are in need of care. And just want to make sure as I talk through these trends that we're also paying attention to the importance of psychological safety. I want to make sure that that word isn't just, thrown out there as a catchphrase. It's very important. Psychological safety is established in the workplace. Staff and leaders have an opportunity to create a workplace where you're recognizing that the mental health, physical health, and spiritual being of your employees when they come to work every day is very important. So along the following that is another trend is just shifting how we do business. And when I say we, I mean in the social sector specifically. We are at a place where there's a lot of threats to the work that we do every day, and shifting our focus from just doing the day-to-day work based on policy, legislation, and regulations. How do we begin to take into account the community's voice and the voices of folks with lived experience, and being able to, with some intentionality, shift what we do every single day to recognize, incorporate those voices and their input. And I'm talking about input into every aspect of what we do every day. This is not only important to us as leaders, but we have an obligation to begin to listen to folks who have been undervalued, unheard, misrepresented, all of those terms that just equal that's happening more frequently, and there's an obligation for us to respond as leaders. The next is the challenge of hybrid work. There's some research out there. This is even pre-pandemic. There were some companies that were looking at, people working from home, figuring out accountability, figuring out productivity. However, that, climbed exponentially during the pandemic. And part of post-pandemic work, we found out that hybrid model worked for some of us. Some of us saw some cost savings in that. Some of us saw some healthier attitudes towards work. We also, opposite of that, is one of the challenges of hybrid work was there's a report that some employees started to feel a little disconnected from not just the office as a physical brick and mortar place, but they were feeling disconnected from the mission and vision and just that office culture and having access to the resources, access to colleagues. So just, starting to think through the challenges of hybrid work, both the advantages and the disadvantages. We're seeing that there is an overall distrust and some suspicion about nonprofit sector work. The trust in our sector has declined. A lot of questions being asked about how do we spend the money that's given to us. There is suspicion around, things anywhere from service provision to quality of services, and then just the overall public feeling that there is an underlying, motive. We all know that we're not in nonprofit work to quote unquote get rich and make money. We hear that all the time. However, we do know that our missions take a margin, and the reality of that, and how do we actually get to a place where we're able to talk that through with folks who are suspicious of the work that we do. We see a decline in donors, donations, and volunteers, and many factors play into that, mostly economic and inflation. Folks trying to understand the mission and vision of an organization when they decide to give. How do they actually see and feel how their dollars are actually helping folks most in need? And again, I think that leaders have an opportunity to revisit their mission and vision, and again, aligning it with folks with lived experience and listening to the community voice. And we have an opportunity to be able to do those things. Another trend is, I don't know if it's a new trend in 2024, but I know it's still here with us, and that's the securing and retaining our workforce. And then on top of that, another layer is consideration given to the multi-generational workforce. We see that some statistics tell us as early as 2025 into 2026 that 75% of the workforce will be made up of that millennial age generation who will be coming into their own as leaders and managers. They also are balancing being able to work with folks straight out of college with little to no experience, and probably some demands around what they believe they should be making as a living wage. And then the millennials also are dealing with folks who are anywhere between 10, 15, and upwards of 20 years older than them, who are kind of talking about the later years of their career, wanting to retire and figuring those things out. So just taking into account that our workforce in the multi-generational composition, that's one of those trends that leaders need to be paying attention to. The other thing that's top of mind are all of the initiatives and work around DEI and understanding the impact of social justice issues and how that impacts the work that we do every day. We know that initiatives under social justice and DEI work is facing some aggressive moves that are meant to devalue and eliminate initiatives that have this focus. And we see this happening, and there's some unprecedented restrictions in funding and some unprecedented policy and legislation being reviewed in several states. So that's another thing that leaders are taking a look at. The ability to effectively, and again, don't know if this is new to 2024, but it's definitely something we need to continue to get better at, and that's addressing the social determinants of health. Doing this effectively, efficiently, and qualitatively, using the funding that we have, but more importantly, drawing attention to the importance that when we center ourselves around the social determinants of health, it has a larger impact on things like healthcare spending, poverty rates, and just the overall health and well-being of our society. So again, that's social determinants of health. We're also taking a look at mergers, acquisitions, and strategic partnerships. Things that make sense to mission-driven agencies who want to strengthen their purpose. Sometimes these mergers, acquisitions, and partnerships do happen as a result of financial crisis. However, wouldn't it be cool if it was also a result or an outcome of folks who are addressing access issues? We know that there are inequities and there's health disparities across the nation. And could we be able to impact any of those things through just simply taking a look at some access issues and funding? We continue to be challenged by funding and payment that just doesn't reflect the true costs of the business that we're doing as a nonprofit. We want to be able to pay our staff and our leaders what they believe their worth is. We want to be able to make sure that they themselves can financially sustain their families. And so we are constantly tracking our ability to pay our bills, pay our staff, and get the right levels of funding. Lastly, I want to put on the list is exploring and getting familiar and being able to have those tough conversations around responsible use of artificial intelligence in the social sector. The artificial intelligence, the AI, is, it's not only is it prevalent, now we're still in a position where we don't want to be behind the 8 ball as a social sector. We want to figure out how to use AI to our advantage and to the advantage of the folks that we serve. So with all of that said, because that was a lot, I'd love to hear if any of those trends are resonating, if there are things that you are dealing with, today, if you wanted to share some examples, or if you have any thoughts about, conceptually, any ideas that you have to offer, any educational nuggets here today while we have an audience that we can share some things with.
I'll jump in and I'll specifically speak on the hybrid environment. Being in child welfare, specifically foster care, where we are a profession where we have to be in the community. COVID was a very critical time for us to have to pivot fairly quickly to not only keep our staff safe, but also continue to keep the welfare of our kids and families that we serve a priority. So I know we were intentional within our organization in serving and supporting those kids and families, as well as our staff, not just in speaking, but having the technology available to go directly into an electronic health record, getting staff that technology to perform these virtual visits, or the safety equipment they needed to provide home visits continued as needed. That was important. But speaking from the working from home environment, that's different, because we in this field are social beings. We want to be connected. So I think more than anything, it taught us that there was a truly need to be intentional on maintaining those connections. Within the organization, we, of course, encouraged our staff, but also our foster parents to use our employee assistance. We actually have an employee assistance program for our foster parents to use to provide great resources, therapy, training, education as needed. But we were intentional on doing wellness Wednesdays when we were all on a Zoom at wherever we are, being intentional, spending a few minutes together, having those high touch points, making sure that when I did reach out to you, Robena, I'm just not talking about work. I am truly asking and waiting for a response on how you being. So I say COVID, while it did put a hiccup in a lot and changed all of our way of doing, it reminded me as a leader, more importantly, is to be human. And remember that we are in this to work, but I think sometimes we forget the humanity side of it and just being civil with people, showing up for people, making deliveries to people's doorsteps if we had to, and just getting back to that. That has built a community. I was happy to say that in our program, we didn't see a lot of flux with staff leaving because I think people felt that connection that if I'm not well, I have a group that supports me.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'd like to add some. I mean, not so much because, well, I said being retired, not so much on any one individual trend that you identified. But one of the things when you went through them and I was listening to them all, I think all of them have this the obvious underlying issue is that they represent a need for some type of change in an agency. They're just going to change it in different areas, but that's really what's happening. So when anyone any leader is involved in trying to change something, I think one of the things, and I always value this in things, they have to make sure that they have literally the right words to use when they're discussing change. Now that might seem obvious, but however, the language sometimes is not always understood. We don't have, so with everybody that's in the dialogue focusing on the things, we assume they all understand each other. But sometimes we don't. So we have to work with language that captures the real underlying feelings and issues that people are going through when they're in any one of those areas. And that sometimes has to be more. That doesn't happen organically. That has to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that. And without taking a lot of time, when I was working, we did have some things when we were doing some new program initiatives. We had change management models in our head that gave us language to organize our thoughts and what we were doing. And I'm not trying to plug this, but we used this. It was Bill Bridges who had a transition theory of change. And it gave us language that when all our staff were, we had language like when we were in an unknown position, we weren't sure what to do. We were in the neutral zone. And everybody having that language meant they had permission to feel comfortable, despite the fact we were anxious. It was okay to be anxious and uncomfortable. And that gave everybody the ability then to focus and stuff. So to have those kind of guidelines or supports in any change process, to me, is necessary. I mean, I remember how helpful and effective it was. And I listened to that list that you went through, Robena. That means all of like Cha-Tanya and Greg, I'm not in there. They're dealing with all of that at once. I mean, that clearly has got to be like anybody's listening. That's a no. I didn't quite honestly, I did not experience that. Not the level of that. So, but I did experience the need for having, like I said, some language and way to normalize the process and that reduces some of the anxiety and gives you the ability to focus then, I think, better. And your staff feel a little confident then. They think then, all right, we might not know where we're going, but we're getting the right questions organized and at least we seem to understand it and we're moving forward. And that's really important to them.
Yeah. Greg, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I can jump in on a topic here quick. I think recruitment and retention, one of the things that I think it's been universal since the pandemic. It's been a challenge for sure, and it's changed. And I think one of the things as nonprofit human service organizations, I'll just speak for Heartland Family Service. I think that this is pretty much shared, but we do a good job of looking at all of the funding things we can do around recruitment and retention. And you mentioned self-care kind of right coming out of the gate. And I think I was thinking about all the things we do around self-care and mindfulness and what we've done over the last several years to strengthen that. And I think we also have to take on the challenge of employee compensation and a sustainable compensation. And I think coming out of COVID, like, was a lot of government support that was, injected into all of our systems in response to COVID. And though that support is now ending, the COVID emergency declaration has ended, and some of those grant dollars that were made available, and grant dollars that were available for retention of staff are now no longer available. How do we maintain the kind of compensation and the continued growth of that compensation over time in a way that is consistent across our organization? Because we've got all different kinds of funding sources. So staff, if we didn't plan for it, could be paid all kinds of different rates for all kinds of different salaries for essentially similar or the same work. And we don't want to have that across the organization. So we have to be planful and consistent. And so that's something that we're challenged with right now, is how do we address compensation in a systematic way across our organization, and not just this year, but for the years to come.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I have, as I travel or hear and visit folks virtually, there is this concern, I should say, a concern presented, challenge with the dollars that have either going away or have left after the post-pandemic support that we got. So absolutely, Greg. Thanks everyone for those nuggets. We do have a question, and I'll read the question, and then I guess we'll just deal with it and have you answer. So our LinkedIn user is asking us, what are some of the aha moments from engaging community members or businesses on a physical basis and more on a virtual basis? Second part of their question is, what works to get private sector and community buy-in that didn't have the same impact as before?
That is a good question. And when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to answer this. But one of the things that I saw as an aha moment to engage the community is that we as a social sector, we need to market ourselves like a business and demonstrate and articulate and give visuals to our outcomes and our impact and make that clear. If we were on the other side and talked about our product having such great outcomes, that would be on billboards everywhere. I think that the social sector needs to lean in a little bit more and do that and advocate that. I walk around sounding like a mathematician because I will spit out some of our outcomes and our numbers when I'm speaking to my community members, when I'm speaking to those that support us, not just around holidays or back to school, but in general conversation, Rotary clubs. I'm telling you, we have a 90% return rate, kids going home to bio families. People need to know that. We have trauma-informed care. We have evidence-based services that we use, and we have to break that down. So I think the way we communicate and be a little bit more outward and transparent of sharing what we do, and then we're seen differently. I think that lends people to say, oh, I wasn't aware of that. And that draws individuals in. So I hope I touched on a response for that a little bit.
Yeah, I might just piggyback on that. I think what came to mind for me is social media, how important that is. It's just a new way to engage outside the organization, whether that's the community, whether it's donors. They're paying attention there, and increasingly so. So I think leveraging that is super important, getting good at it. It's not something, I know when I first came into the organization, it's not something we did, but we are increasingly getting better at how do we do social media, and that online engagement in a way that it's bringing people in, because it really does matter. There's people that are paying attention to our socials and comparing that to other organizations locally and nationally and what they're doing. So it's an important area to pay attention to.
Yes.
I just wanted to add something to, I think, what Cha-Tanya said, mentioning how she can attract donors and people and gives them data to demonstrate how effective their programs are, which is obviously important. And again, I think this has also been thought about. I mean, you adding to that a version of storytelling, telling the stories of examples of things that I know that sounds we overuse this, it sounds like, but to effectively have storytelling as part of that process is incredibly important for people. As they said, you can even look at all the neurological reasons that it works out, how it affects your brains when they hear stories, and what part of the MRI starts shining. But I mean, it's true. And I did an awful lot of legislative advocacy work when I was working. I was involved in that a lot. And that was always key to get, and there's where you use the community workers, people with lived voices, and they can really go through a good story that you have to work with them to do that. But that can be done effectively. And I really think that's an added part of the impact statement with the data, which is, of course, it has to be shown that you're a good business. But that gets the message to people to respond to. And I really think that's important. And I think we give enough lip service to us. I'm not so sure we effectively work at using it as well as we should.
And that speaks to Robena. You mentioned one of the 6 stressors that we're dealing with is AI. AI could be useful in using that algorithmic decision support of looking at large pieces of data, informing our decision making, is giving us insight, showing us trends. So that's another way we could lean into it instead of being afraid of it.
Yes. Thank you all for your comments. We are right at 1:59, and there is a question. How can you foster a social media friendly culture in an organization where the leadership is skeptical or opposed to it? This is like a lightning round. Does anybody have any nuggets?
I brought up social media, so yes. I'll tackle it. It's a tough one. Like that can be challenging for sure. I think it's what I would suggest is just to try and start small, start with something that's low risk, to try and build some comfort. That's probably the suggestion I would make there.
Thank you so much. I hope that answered the question. So I want to wrap up today by thanking everyone who found some time in their very, very busy schedules to include our alums who engaged today. I also would be remiss if I didn't recognize that it's Black History Month. So I hope we are all out there celebrating the achievements and recognizing the contributions of Black Americans during this month and then beyond. And last, I really want to say that I hope that Social Current and ELI are a part of your organizational success and part of your leadership development journey. Please go to our website and take a look at the registration link and take a look at our website in general. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.